Okay, the audio better be working because I am so excited about this. Okay. All the tutorials that we've done up to this point have just been, I don't know, they haven't even been like real useful. It's just been like proving an idea. But okay, I'm excited. Here we go. All right, so earlier in the previous tutorial, we took a look at um, what did we do? We took a look at training a chatbot to talk like a pirate. Okay, that's kind of cool. Not really. And then we trained our chatbot to look at JSON and translate that JSON into plain English, which is very cool if I want to update the metadata in Domo. But here's the problem. I don't have a way to update metadata in Domo because I don't have functions written yet to do that. The only functions that I've currently have written, am I recording my screen? Yeah, okay. The only functions I currently have written are to get data flow by ID and get the data flow definition. But I don't have a function for writing tags or updating data flow descriptions. Now, to be fair, you can't just tell Domo GPT, write a function for updating data flow tags. You can't, I mean, you can, but you wouldn't get a result because an LLM is not smart. It doesn't know Domo. It's only been trained on like stuff that has been written on the internet, and it's trained to, or it's a complex math equation, if you will, for guessing what the next most reasonable word is. Now, if you fine tune, that's the correct language, if you fine tune the Anthropic model on a bunch of text written by Domo about Domo, yes, it can get smarter, but when you tell it to write a function, who knows what the output is going to be? And that's where we pick up this tutorial. I want a function that can copy Jay Wilson's handwriting and write a function. It's always going to be in snake case, not camel case, not Pascal case, not screaming case. It's going to be in snake case. And it's going to know to use the auth object to handle API authentication. It's going to know that the auth object has Domo instance attached to it. That's a lie. It's not going to quote unquote know any of these things. It's going to follow patterns. And I think that's like when people talk about using AI, it sounds really frustrating when people treat it as if it's magic and don't understand that all your LLM does is it gets really good at guessing the next word. So, how can we make my LLM get better at guessing the next word? How can we make it guess how to write like Jay Wilson? Well, when I create my prompt, I'm going to teach it to speak Jay Wilson. I'm going to give it samples of code that I've written and say, this is how you write Jay Wilson styled code. You use snake case. You always have these parameters. Um, we have a function called client.getDataSync, and we use that to send our API request. Let me be clear. Domo GPT doesn't know what the outcome of this is going to be. It's just going to know that it was used twice to send a put and a get request, and it's going to know that oftentimes response is the result of some sort of request or fetch or HTTP sync.async client request that hits the internet. So it's going to know that response is an API request, and by know, it's going to, based off of math, predict that there's a 75% probability that this, whatever comes next, is a tool that can hit the internet. That's what it's going to quote unquote know. Anyway, set that aside. I'm going to train my chatbot to speak Jay Wilson by giving it a question and a sample response. And the more sample responses you give your chatbot, the better it will be at speaking Jay Wilson. You're not training your chatbot to do anything. Please don't use the language of train. That's something else that literally costs thousands, if not millions or billions of dollars, and that's not what we're doing. We're just giving it examples, and it's using these examples to predict how would Jay Wilson write. What format does Jay Wilson use? Is he a JavaScript developer or a Python developer? Oh, he uses snake case. Probably a Python developer. Stuff like this. Let me get off my horse and let's get into the example. So, we're going to say, hey, create messages using that Python developer system prompt. And then we're going to add the message, write a function that puts a list of tags for data flow using the following URL. Use this body format. You might have noticed that example is written into the prompt. So it should get a 100%. It should do really well on this task because it already knows how to do the task. It's written into the instructions. All right, so we're going to call our endpoint with this message, including these instructions. And let's see what the system response says. The system response says, hey, function, or sorry, this is Python. It says receive tag list. It's a list of string. It's going to return a dictionary of strings or any. No, it's not. That certainly isn't in my description. So it's guessing. It's guessing what it's returning because it doesn't know what it's returning, so that's fun. Oh, sorry, I'm lying. I looked at the generate tag body. It is, in fact, going to return a dictionary of string or any. Well, it's just returning a dictionary. Okay, anyway. All right, so here's the function itself. Get data flow tags by ID sync. So yes, it is using camel case. Yes, it passed in Domo auth. Yes. Okay, it says it's returning any, so it doesn't know what it's returning. That's fun. It's returning an instance of whatever the response from client get data sync is. But it doesn't know what client get data sync is. So any is kind of correct. But I guess my point is I should still come back and massage the code that gets generated by an LLM. That's long and short of it, is just don't put this straight into production. Do check and make sure that it's doing what you think it's doing. But here it's generating a body using this function up here. Great. The generate tags body. It's checking for is success. And if it's not success, it raises an error. Otherwise, it returns response. Magnificent. I love this. Okay. So again, what I wanted to highlight is a trained model is not actually trained. It just has some examples included as context to the LLM. So here's a question. If I say, that's great, now generate a function to get the tags. It doesn't have an example of this yet. But what will it return? I'm curious. Because this previous question and the response, including this URL, are in the context window, it should know that this API exists. So it says, okay, we are going to write a function called get data flow. It's going to return any. Okay. This is the URL we're going to. We're using this library. This library doesn't exist anywhere in the world except literally on my computer and in GitHub. So again, it doesn't know that client get data sync exists. It just saw it in previous examples of code snippets and it's like, oh, this must exist. I'm pretty confident it can hit the internet. So that's what I'm going to use to get this URL. Okay, it tests for success because that's Jay Wilson's handwriting, and then I return a response. Great, I have two functions that I previously did not have, and I would like them to exist in my root function because this is what I'm actually using in production. So how can I take an LLM response and turn it into something useful or like commit it to disk? So I said, all right, let me see if I can't have not ChatGPT. Let me see if I can have Domo GPT, Anthropic, write a function that will take a string response, because this is a string. Notice all these /ns. This is a string, and I want it committed to disk. So I said, I have a file system. with a file called dataflow.py that should store all these functions we are generating. Write a function to find if the function exists in the .py file, and if it does, replace that function with a new function passed as a string input. Guys, Jay Wilson is officially asking for magic, right? Well, I am and I'm not. If I had said, how do I write this to disk, right? Implicit in there is this question of how do I write a Python function that can convert a string into disk? And let's think that through. Here's my file. What would I need my function to do in order to know if the function had already been defined in this file, regex? And how would it know where the end of the file is? Maybe I look for return response, or maybe I look for a new line with nothing after it. I don't know. Maybe return response, probably return response. But how do I know what the end of a function is? And then insert it, right? Like, that's a bunch of regex. And Jay Wilson, he's terrible at regex. But do you know who knows a lot of regex? The internet. The internet knows a ton of regex because there's a ton of code that has been written in the past that was really, hopefully, correct at regex. There's been style guides and instructions written about regex. So if my model is large enough to encompass all of GitHub or whatever it was trained on, maybe it's good at regex. And that's what we're about to find out. So I'm going to go ahead and run this guy, and let's see what the response is. I am so excited. Oh my God, I am so excited. All right, so it says, here's a Python function that checks if, okay, so it gave me some, this is not a comment, this is plain English, right? And then it did like the triple lines to denote, hey, I'm writing something in Python. And then it wrote my Python function. And then down here at the bottom, it summarizes the code by saying, this function does the following, na 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 na. Now, this is good, but it's also a problem. The problem is I'm running into the boundaries of Domo's context window. Okay, I'm running into the boundaries of Domo LLM, Anthropic edition. I'm running into the boundaries of that guy's context window. What is a context window? The context window says, how much stuff can you send to the LLM? You're like, Jay, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. How many messages do we have in our chat history? We have 7 messages in our chat history. And let me just print them out for you real quick. Can I do pd.data frame import pandas as pd message.toJSON for message in messages.messages. Is it to JSON? Yeah, okay. So these are the 7 messages. The first one was the instruction said, you are a Python developer. The second one was I said, hey, write a function that puts. Then it came up with a response. Notice each of these are pure Python. And then this 6th response had just normal text. And I said, okay, that's a problem. Now the reason why that's a problem is because in my first prompt, I said only respond with Python code, do not include any preamble, make sure to comment the functions. So because my LLM is responding with pure text, it tells me that the instruction to just speak Python, do not speak English. That instruction is outside of the context of the LLM. So maybe somewhere about midway through here, is where the cutoff point is because I have too much stuff and it's truncating the old stuff. That's my guess. And I'm going to prove that by saying, hey, take my messages and only keep the 0th, the 3rd, and the 4th. And then ignore the part where I started going on about writing a file system. So now I have you are a Python developer, That's great. And then write a function. Okay, so now we're going to invoke our LLM, asking it again to write a file system. This time, if it does what I want it to do, hopefully it will not have plain text English at the front, and it won't have this summary shenanigans at the end. All right, invoke. Why am I going over this? One, because I like talking. No, because it's like when I talk to people and they're like, LLMs are magic, AI is magic. I'm like, guys, AI is not magic. It's a system. It's a system of math that's good at guessing things, but it has rules. And the better we understand how LLMs actually work, the more effective we will be at using them to create magic, which is what what I've done here. So notice here it starts with the hashtag. What it tells me is like this is a comment, and this is pure Python code, and there's no, what's this down here? Write it back to disk. Now write a function. Great. Now write a function that adds a function to the datafloat.py file if it does not exist. I don't know why that's down there at the bottom. Why is that at the bottom? Because that's this guy. I don't know why that's down there. Um, I don't know why that's down there. I have a theory, but I'm not getting into it right now. In any case, I now have pure Python that I want to commit to disk. So how can I write this to disk? What I will do is I'm going to just take the stuff that I'm interested here, my define update file. With file.open as file and write updated context. Okay. Um, and then what I could do is I could say code is equal to this, and then I can say with open, I already started this, utils.py, write as f dot write code. Okay, so this function would write this to disk. Now, notice in here there's a bunch of splits. We're doing some math magic. Just eyeballing through this, I'm not sure if I like this implementation or the one that I got the last time I ran this. Here, which is using regex to kind of do the search instead of this split format. Can I append? Is that how you append? Okay, I'm gonna try appending because I think I like the code that I got last time around better, but just to show how this works, I'm gonna, okay. Ooh, you did not. Why did you do that? Oh, sorry. I see what happened. Okay, so let me, so that is my new code. No, 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 no. We're going to come back into utils. Um, I wrote it with all of those string characters, which is not what I wanted. Let me save this. Okay, close it. We're going to append it again. Okay, here's utils. Okay. So let's take a look at this function, update file and function. So it says the new function is a string. The file path defaults to dataflow.py. Um, and then how am I supposed to pass in? What command did you send? All right. Anyway, here's the function name. If define function name is in the content, define function name, and the ending is content.find a double new line. And then pass in so here they're just saying pass in the whole new function. Okay. Right. Okay. So they're assuming that I'm passing in the entire function definition here as a new function, as a string, and then it parses out what is the function name from this blob that I send in. In the previous version I receive, I actually pass in the function name as well as a new function string, and I presume this operates in a similar way. All that to say, I like this version less. So we're going to stick with the previous one I have. Okay. That's fine. Um, cool. So now I'm going to go to messages.messages and I'm going to grab message 2, which gave me the function get data flow tags by ID. Okay? So here's a message. And then I need to pass this into disk. So I'm going to run from that utils file. I'm going to write update function in file. And I'm going to send that to test.py. Let me delete all this. Just pretend like this wasn't there. Okay. We're going to send it to test.py. The name of the function is get data flow tags by ID. And then I'm going to pass in message to.message. Is that going to work? It might not because it has this comment in front, so I'm intrigued to see what happens actually. So we're going to run this. Function get data flow tags by ID has been added to test.py. Let's see what test.py looks like. Here's get data flow ID. That was there originally. And then here, this was just inserted. And I said earlier, right, I didn't like this any. But right, then I would go through and like make some changes and then we would call this good. What is in message 1? What's in message? Okay, message 0 has the original message. Okay, so let me run this again and let's do the other function. So we'll say reinstantiate this where all it has is you are a Python developer. We're going to run the endpoint again with give me a put. All right, I'm going to move this down just because for clarity's sake, it makes more sense for you to live here. And this is where I invoke the model. So that's just for, okay. Okay, so then my response was defend, okay. So it did these two things. Now I'm recognizing that my super cool function my utility function is not capable or is not designed to handle a body that contains two functions, but that's okay. We're just gonna say pass in this, and I need to make sure. Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna pass in messages -1. I'm going to re-look at test. So get data flow of ID, and then it added generate. I have a code generator, guys. This is a long tutorial. I hope you stuck with me, but like, I have I have a means of generating code that matches my handwriting, that comments my code, that's more consistent than I'll ever be. Um, it's kind of cool. And then all I have to do, right, is take this, put this to VS Studio Code, and just make sure it doesn't like have any egregious errors. Like instead of returning any, you're actually going to return rgd.response get data. That is what this API actually returns, which it doesn't know about. Here we go. Am I importing list? Did I import list? I did not. Are there any other things about this that might break? So here I just wanted to specify that this will return a dictionary. This will return an instance of, because all of my root functions return response get data. I love the comments. The chest for errors. Oh, gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. And now that I'm happy with this, I'm actually just going to take this and copy this over to data flows. Sorry, dataflow.py, and replace it because this all works. I think, like in an ideal world, I would have some sort of like regression I don't know what regression testing is. I would have some sort of testing set up on my library, but this is, guys, I just used an AI to generate code for me. I can retire early.